In a city of 8 million people, only one person stopped to save him. A billionaire collapsed in a dark alley, and the only hand reaching for him was a homeless poor old woman everyone else pretended didn't exist. The winter wind cut through New York City with the kind of sharpness that made everyone rush from one heated building to another. Cars hissed over wet pavement, steam curled up from subway grates, and the bright billboards of Midtown flickered over crowds too busy to look up. But beneath that glowing skyline, life unfolded very differently for the people no one noticed. Margaret Maggie Delaney lay curled beneath a threadbare army green blanket near the corner of West 47th Street. At 74, her body had grown frail, but her mind was still sharp enough to count the passing footsteps. She recognized regulars: the banker who always smoked 2 cigarettes before work, the nanny who bought hot chocolate for the children she watched, the young man who walked fast, earbuds in, never looking at anything. To them, Maggie was part of the street, like a lamppost or a trash can, something that existed but not someone to address. She had once had a life far from this pavement, a husband who adored her, a daughter with curly hair she used to braid each morning, a career she'd taken pride in, working as a seamstress in a boutique that no longer existed. But life had a way of slipping through your fingers. First her husband passed, then the boutique shut down, then her daughter moved across the country and stopped returning calls. Rent piled up, and suddenly one eviction changed everything. Still, Maggie clung to her dignity. She kept her small corner tidy, collected books left behind by tourists, and hummed old jazz songs as she sorted the day's donations. She spoke to people kindly, even when they ignored her. Across the street, just 20 yards from where Maggie slept, stood a towering glass building with a golden sign at its entrance. Inside, a man who possessed almost everything was losing the only thing he'd never been able to buy: time. Richard Hale, at 58, was the definition of success. Billionaire, philanthropist, media-shy tech mogul whose empire stretched across 3 continents. He was known for his sharp business mind, for the way he could see trends before they formed, for the wars he quietly won behind boardroom doors. But behind the walls of his penthouse office, he felt the pressure of the life he'd built pressing into his chest. Long nights, endless meetings, a marriage that had crumbled years ago, a daughter he tried to love, but whose resentment of him grew with each missed piano recital, each birthday spent on an airplane, each promise broken. Tonight he sat at his desk long after most employees had gone home. A list of meetings lay open on his screen. He rubbed his temples. The room blurred slightly. A faint burn pulsed down his left arm, but he ignored it. He had ignored symptoms for months. He rose, grabbed his coat, and told himself he just needed fresh air. Outside, the city swallowed him in its sounds. The taxis, the chatter, the wind slicing between the skyscrapers. He crossed the street, heading for the alley shortcut where paparazzi rarely followed. He wanted silence, just a moment of it. But halfway down the dim walkway, his vision flickered. His knees buckled, his breath caught like a fist tightening in his chest. He reached for his phone, but it slipped from his fingers. He fell hard against the concrete, his heartbeat thundering. His mouth tried to form a call for help, but the words came out as a groan. And only one person heard him. Maggie had been drifting in and out of sleep, her blanket pulled tight around her shoulders, when she heard the muffled sound. A cry, cut short, a body hitting the ground, a struggling breath. Her instincts, honed by years of listening for danger, snapped awake. She pushed herself up, ignoring the ache in her joints. With slow steps, she followed the sound into the alley. There she saw him, a man in an expensive coat, face pale, one hand clawing weakly at the air for help. "Oh dear," she whispered, kneeling beside him. Her cold fingers touched his forehead. Burning. "Sir, can you hear me?" His lips moved, but the words were slurred. She had seen this before. Back when she was young, when her husband collapsed beside her at the dinner table, and she had been helpless, not knowing what to do. But she had learned since then. She volunteered in shelters. She listened when nurses explained symptoms during free health workshops for the homeless. She knew a stroke when she saw one. She grabbed his phone from the ground. The screen was cracked, but she managed to swipe for emergency call. Her voice trembled but remained firm. This is a medical emergency. A man is having a stroke on West 47th. Send help. Please hurry. While they waited, she placed her coat under his head, her blanket around him. She held his hand, though he couldn't grip back. You stay with me, sir. You're not alone, she murmured. Just breathe with me, one breath at a time. Richard's eyes flickered open for a moment. He saw her face, lined with age, framed by graying curls, eyes full of concern. He tried to speak but couldn't. Yet something in him calmed. The sirens arrived minutes later. EMTs rushed out, stabilizing him, lifting him onto a stretcher. Ma'am, were you with him? One paramedic asked. No, I just heard him fall. You saved him. Stroke caught early. Timing matters. You probably saved his life. She blinked, stunned. I did what anyone would do. But she knew that wasn't true. Too many people walked past suffering they didn't want to see. As the ambulance took him away, one EMT paused. We'll let the hospital know what you did. But Maggie simply returned to her corner, gathering her blanket and coat again. The night swallowed her back into the world of people unseen. 2 days later, when Richard woke in the hospital with his speech slowly returning and movement in his fingers improving, the doctors explained everything. You could have died, one said. Your stroke was severe. The homeless woman who called 911 may have saved your life. Richard stared at the ceiling. A homeless woman? The idea unsettled him, though he didn't understand why. Maybe because he couldn't imagine someone so forgotten by society stepping in when the world he belonged to had stepped out. He asked his assistant to track her down. It took nearly 12 hours, but eventually someone identified an elderly woman who slept near his building. Richard insisted on leaving the hospital early, a decision the doctors hated, but he was determined. He arrived at West 47th Street with his driver and security. Crowds moved around them. Street sounds echoed off the buildings. And then he saw her, sitting quietly near her corner, adjusting the fraying edge of her blanket, humming softly to herself. Maggie Delaney? He asked gently. She looked up, startled. Yes, sir. Do I know you? You saved my life, he said. She squinted as though trying to recall the moment. You're the man from the alley. Yes, he nodded. I am. She smiled faintly. I'm glad you're all right. That's what matters. Most people, he thought, would ask for compensation, money, a reward, something. But she was simply relieved he was alive. I want to help you, he said. Anything you need. She shook her head. I don't need much. But you deserve more than this, he insisted. More than sleeping on the street. More than being invisible. Her eyes softened. Invisible, she chuckled sadly. Haven't heard someone say that out loud. You won't be invisible to me, he said, voice low. For the first time in years, someone looked at her. Really looked. Not with pity, but with gratitude. He invited her into his car. She hesitated, glancing at her belongings. Her whole life packed into 2 bags. It's okay, he assured her. Everything important comes with you. The ride to the shelter he arranged took only minutes, but the silence between them held decades of 2 very different lives. He arranged a warm bed for her, meals, a medical checkup, clean clothes. When she stepped out of the examination room wearing a simple sweater and soft pants, he felt something tighten in his chest. She wasn't invisible at all. She was someone's grandmother, someone's mother, someone who had lived a full life before life broke her. Why did you help me? He asked. She shrugged. Because no one helped my husband when he had his stroke. And I swore if I ever saw it happen again, I wouldn't let someone die alone. His throat tightened. Thank you. The next week he visited her daily. Sometimes he brought soup from a diner. Sometimes just conversation. She told him stories of her daughter, of old New York, of dancing in Harlem clubs during her youth, of love and heartbreak. He told her about the emptiness of wealth, the daughter he longed to fix things with, the pressures of living a life built on achievement instead of meaning. It's never too late, you know, she told him one evening, to call your daughter. You think she'll forgive me? Time softens most things, and she said, but someone has to take the first step. He took her words to heart. A month later, he brought his daughter with him, a college-age young woman with a guarded expression. This is the woman who saved my life, he introduced. His daughter sat beside Maggie listening as she recounted the night she found him. For the first time in years, father and daughter spoke to each other. Slowly, carefully, but they spoke. Afterward, Richard offered Maggie an apartment, not a lavish one, just safe and warm. She refused at first, but eventually agreed on one condition. I won't be your charity case, but if you want a friend, I can be that. He smiled. I'd be honored. Months passed. Maggie grew stronger, healthier. She volunteered at the same shelters she once lived in. She mended clothes for free. She read books again. Richard visited her often, sometimes with his daughter, sometimes alone. His company changed too. He pushed for better programs for the homeless, funded free clinics, invested in mental health outreach. All because one woman refused to walk past a stranger suffering. One evening, as snow fell softly outside Maggie's apartment window, she sat with Richard sipping tea. I never understood why you helped me so much, she said. He looked at her gently. Because you reminded me what being human looks like. She smiled. Her wrinkles softened under the lamplight. And you, sir, she replied, reminded me that even the richest hearts can be poor until they choose otherwise. The city lights shimmered outside. Two people from opposite worlds sat together, bound not by wealth or status, but by a single moment on a cold New York night, when compassion bridged a gap the world believed was impossible to cross. And in a city full of millions, they saw each other, not as billionaire and beggar, but as human beings, alive, together, where no one was invisible anymore.